Okay, calm down.
Thank you so much, Rami Khouri, for joining us. Rami Khouri is a distinguished public policy fellow at the American University of Beirut and a non-resident senior fellow at Arab Center, Washington, D.C. He's also a journalist, a prolific journalist, and the author of several books, including most recently, Understanding Hamas and Why That Matters, which he co-wrote with Helena Koban of Just World Book. So thank you so much for joining.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I just wanted to talk about what you think is most notable in terms of what has changed in the world because of October 7th, and also what you think the biggest misunderstandings of October 7th are right now.
Well, there's a lot of things there, but if I were to choose a few that were the most significant, I think the most significant thing is that the October 7 attack, with the Israeli response, but even before the Israeli response, I think the intention of the attack succeeded in totally upending the status quo in the Middle East and threw everything up in the air without any clarity about what was going to happen. As one prominent scholar of Hamas who has studied them and knows them and has written books on them said that they rolled the dice without knowing exactly what was going to be the repercussions, but knowing that they would pay a heavy price. So that's the first thing, is that the whole regional status quo has been upended and is up in the air, and we don't know where it's going to land. I think the second thing is that the Israeli response has not only shattered Gaza and shattered hundreds of pagers and walkie-talkies in Lebanon, it's also shattered the foundation of international law on human rights protections that the Western world set up by the action of the winners of World War II. After World War II, the world set up the system of international law and protection of human rights and to prevent the kind of atrocities that happened in World War II, and especially the Nazi genocide against the Jews. Well, the state that says it represents the Jews of the world has completely shattered that order, shown that there is no such thing as an international community, which is what people talk about, the international community. There is no international community, and there is no international law to speak of. Maybe there's international law that determines the size of a container that can be shipped, but there's no international law that is respected and implemented by the powers that created these laws and conventions and treaties and UN resolutions. This stuff is all just paper now. And if the international community could not intervene to stop the genocide, or what the International Court of Justice said was a genocide, a plausible genocide in Gaza, then international law is a imaginary thing. That's the second thing I think that happened. And then the third thing, I think, is that the Arab order, the order of states, sovereign states that emerged after World War I across the Arab world, about the same time as the Zionist movement was started to work with British colonial powers to create a Jewish state that became Israel, that whole state order of Arabs, or of Arab peoples, has proven to be a docile non-actor in the region. It's very disappointing, but they've been sitting around watching this stuff on Jazeera, and whether it's Gaza or Lebanon or the Iran-Israel exchanges, and we don't know what's coming next. But the Arab world is totally not there. They don't exist, and the only people doing the fighting against Israel are non-state Arab armed groups, Hezbollah, Hamas, Ansarullah, and a couple others, and Iran. So we're dealing with a situation in which state sovereignty in the Arab world has shown itself to be slightly fictitious or notional. It's not really solid, and the the people, the groups that do fight. I'm not saying that we should fight all the time, but when there is a conflict, people are fighting each other. The only people doing the fighting in the Arab world are these non-state actors, and they emerged often, especially Hamas and Hezbollah. They came to life as a response to Israeli occupation and subjugation and humiliation and colonial settlements and things like that. So the whole region has revealed its weaknesses and its fictions. And the last point I'd make is that the overriding um, theme of what I see happening, and it became most clear recently with Iran and Israel getting into the battle with each other, and the US on the side of Israel fighting directly against Iran, even if in a defensive mode. The last thing that became clear was that the colonial era never ended. The US and Great Britain, the two great colonial powers, the tag team powers of the last century, the British first and then the Americans after World War II, those two great Western colonial powers have been the enthusiastic armorers, financiers, diplomatic protection, and cheerleaders for the Israeli plausible genocide in Gaza. It's astounding how that is. And also with the Iran entry into the fighting directly, we see that the British and the Americans, we see that the British and the Americans are the two Western colonial powers that historically and today are the most active in uh, tormenting Middle Eastern states and peoples. And I give you two specific dates and incidents that shaped that, in my view. One is the 1917 Balfour Declaration, which the Great Britain did to promise a home for the Jews in Palestine, which was 93% Arab then. And Britain didn't even have control of it when it made that promise. But that's how colonialism works. So that 1917 colonial crime by Great Britain in collusion with the Zionist movement was a historic turning point for the modern Middle East. The second date and event is the 1953 Anglo-American overthrow of the elected Mossadegh government in Iran. And it's not an accident of history that you have now the Iranian government and the Hezbollah and Hamas uh, are the key fighters now, pushing back against British and American colonial traditions and active colonial adventures in Gaza and other places. It's no accident because these two are the kind of bookends of the century of colonial torment of Middle Eastern people, and it's still going on with the British and the Americans leading it, which is pretty fascinating. So we need the historians and the political psychiatrists to come in here and give us some analysis.